Hey everybody, this is Greg Underdahl with another fishing podcast, and today I am talking with Josh Bertrand. Josh Bertrand is a Major League Fishing angler. He hails from the West Coast, one of the very best West Coast anglers out there, and had a great time talking with Josh. We talked about all kinds of things. Specifically, we got into what it takes to be a pro angler and what to expect in 2021. So what do you say we just get into it?
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
Josh, I got to tell you, you are, I'm biased, I guess. There's certain people that I just enjoy, filming when I'm out filming for Major League Fishing. And you're an excellent smallmouth fisherman. You're just an all-around. Anytime I've worked with you, you're just a super nice guy, and you're level-headed. You're down to earth. You're humble. And I've told you this. We did a podcast not too long ago, and I told you that. I'm not really a fan of my favorite people on the planet are just people that are humble and down to earth, and they let their actions speak for themselves. That you're just a hell of an angler, and you don't have to talk crap because your record speaks for itself.
Well, thanks, dude. I haven't even said a word yet, and I already feel like $1 million. So thank you very much for that, man.
That's what that's what I aim to do here.
Yeah, you're doing a good job so far. And honestly, I can say the same thing with you, Greg. Every time we've shared the boat, we've had fun. We crack jokes when the camera's not rolling, and we just have a good time, right? I know you're a hardcore fisherman yourself, so I don't know. There's something weird, there's something a little bit weird when you're in the boat in a tournament situation, and you have someone in the boat who maybe isn't a hardcore angler, and they may not understand everything that's going on in front of them, going on in your head. And I don't know, man, when I get in the boat with someone like you, some things just go without saying, and it's hard to explain. I don't really know where I'm going with that. But it's a pleasure to be in the boat with a hardcore angler, man. It's a different thing. 2020.
For a professional angler, this has got to have been like a hell year for you at first. Tell me kind of, I was there. I was in, I think it was Texas was the last Bass Pro Tour event, and everything just kind of shut down. And honestly, for me, I really didn't know, what was going to happen. I was like, well, this COVID thing, are we done? For how long are we going to be done for? I'm hearing all kinds of stuff. Like, is this Ebola through the air, or what can we expect of this thing? And so I want to know from an angler's perspective. Obviously, you guys, to make a living, you guys have got to fish. So, and me as a videographer, I have to film. So tell me, I was super nervous for two months. I was like, I need to be filming here. Tell me, as a Major League Fishing pro, as a pro angler, what was going through your head?
It was crazy, Greg. It started out as everyone saw the progression. No matter what you do, no matter where you live in the country, you saw the progression of how it impacted everybody, right? And our season started, I think, in late January or early February, and it was a non-factor. There hadn't even been a case in the country yet, I don't think, for the first tournament. And then our second tournament, we go to Florida, and there's a couple cases, and people are starting to talk about it. I'm flying to Lake Okeechobee. I had my boat parked down there already, and it was semi-strange at the airport, just knowing that, okay, this is around. Our third tournament was Lake Fork, and that's in March, and it got very real during the middle of the tournament. I remember halfway through the week that we were there, and meanwhile, we're having an awesome tournament. I mean, we're at Lake Fork, right? I mean, literally prime time as the fish are flooding the banks, and we are having, we're on the best lake in the country at the best time, and we're having a blast. The energy at the lake is amazing, but we're out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, man, and you're watching the news, seeing things happen. And I remember like one evening, it was either at the end of practice or the first day of the tournament or something. They canceled the NBA season, or they paused the entire NBA season, and I had never seen anything like that. And I was like, oh wow, that is pretty real,
Yeah.
And within the next few days, they had done it with all other major professional team sports. And by the time that week was over, man, it was like, a few guys like flew home, like they left their rigs in Texas,
Wow.
buddies in California and stuff. And I was like, I'm driving home, dude. I don't think I don't think I'm gonna be back here fishing any tournaments anytime soon. And thankfully that I took it home because it's all I had, man. And it got scary, just like you said, you're sitting there for 2 months without any work, and as we realized the magnitude of the delays we were going to be looking at, a lot of the one of the scary things was a lot of the companies we work with, and have sponsorships through, we weren't sure how they were going to be affected by this, and couple of them looked like they were in major, major trouble. And I think all of them kind of really started to tighten up their belts a little bit, and it was a really scary period through like April and May. And then what happened was everyone kind of got forced into the outdoors, and so many more folks were fishing, so many more folks were in the outdoors. All these companies ended up seeing record sales. Now, doesn't necessarily mean that they put tons of extra money in their pocket, because they had all the supply chain problems and like just all the other mayhem that this has created. There were plenty of issues and problems, but ultimately, by like June and July, obviously the virus is still a major problem. Was still a major problem in the company. By that point, I knew I wasn't going to starve this year, at least, man. Did you have a similar thought process?
Yeah. So what happened is after everything hit the fan in March, I got super lucky. I had a client who fed me a ton. They fed me a ton of editing work.
Nice.
And there's a college in St. Paul that is one of my clients, and they shut down, and really the only way that they could communicate to their students was through video. So it really worked out well for me. I didn't film anything for them, but they gave me a lot of editing work. So that really saved me in that 2-month time period, I guess, before shoots started coming back online. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting, so I was planning on in 2020 to actually buy a boat. And I was like, okay, sounds like, well, so I have this pontoon. I was like, I need to pay off the pontoon first. We have this like family pontoon. My wife and I we live on a little lake, here in Minnesota. And so this pontoon is like, we bought a few years ago, and it's been awesome, but I don't fish out of it typically. I need a fishing boat, for goodness sakes. I love my kayak, but it was like, okay, it's time that I get a full-fledged fishing boat again. I sold my boat 10 plus years ago, my bass boat, to go freelance and move back up to Minnesota. I don't need to go through my whole story here, but anyway, I don't like having a lot of debt, so I was like, I need to pay off this pontoon. It was looking like I'd be able to pay it off in, beginning kind of spring of 2020. I was thankfully able to do that, but then when COVID hit, I was like, well, I can't. I don't feel it's responsible for me to, with all this financial certainty, to even think about buying a fishing boat.
Sure.
So I put that on the back burner. Unfortunately, I'm like, well, it ain't happening this year. I don't know when we're going to come out of this thing. And shoots started coming back online. And then I started looking around. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm comfortable buying a boat. But towards the beginning, I would say the end of summer, I was like, all right, I'm going to look. Things have actually been pretty good, surprisingly, for me as far as shoots. Everything kind of came back, So I started looking for boats, and there were no boats available. Like everything.
Couldn't even buy one.
What's that?
couldn't even buy one.
Yeah, no, I couldn't even buy a boat because all of the inventory was gone. Because people were buying boats. I was blown away by it, quite frankly. I didn't, never in a million years would I have thought that the market for fishing boats, would during a COVID summer would be what they were. And so I actually I had to get a boat built. Took about, 2 months, I guess. But I ordered a boat in September and I got it in the beginning of November. So it's just been a wild year. I feel very fortunate that that's my story, but I know a lot of people obviously are having a tough time with this. But I got super lucky, I guess. I don't know how else to say it,
I'm with you. I feel that we're lucky to be and who knows how things are going to look in 2 years, but we dodged a bullet in the outdoor industry during this 2020, dude. That's the only way to put it, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like when you look at what we do, and I see some of these companies are talking about how it's they're using it in their marketing slogans or whatever strategy is, like fishing is the original social distancing or whatever, but I think that's very much the case. I think we don't, I've heard of golf courses even closing down, which I think is absolutely insane. I think in California that's happening, which is just ridiculous to me, but we don't have clubhouses. We don't have to worry about any of that. We're out, and even tournament fishing. I mean, it's we've all been wearing masks and everything. The boat officials and the camera guys. But it's pretty darn safe, and especially there's all kinds of evidence too. Vitamin D is awesome for you.
True.
So I think we're really we're fortunate, to be doing this. To be in this particular sport,
We've been able to go escape the craziness too and do what we love to do. Like I can't imagine, being locked up for 12 months without having, something like fishing to get to go do and unwind. And, even through the whole time, dude, like I was going out to the lake a couple days a week, even though there were no tournaments or anything happening, just for some sanity. And I was never so appreciative to be able to do so. Like it was so like every morning, like launching the boat and walking down to the dock, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah. Thank you for being able to get out and do this. It's so great for that.
And it turns out it's actually really good for you to be outside and getting sunshine on your skin, for this. So
100%.
Well, I want to get into, how you got into fishing. Like what are the origins, Josh Bertrand, his fishing story? What's the origin story? That I'd be very interested in hearing that.
Yeah, I'm actually from up north like you, man. Not quite not quite the same part of the country, but I was originally born in New Hampshire. And we lived out there.
Wait a minute. Now maybe that's where you get that smallmouth thing.
Well, yeah, I don't know, dude. I never really grew up fishing for them. I never even fished for bass when we lived in New Hampshire, believe it or not. But there's water everywhere, just like Minnesota. And it was just something I did with my grandfather. I did it with my dad, my mom, my grandma would take me to the lake. I mean, I would literally fish almost every day, all summer long. For whatever would bite, from the time I was old enough to hold a fishing rod until now. But as a kid, my grandparents had a cottage on a small lake, and it was a little trout lake. But we would troll around the lake with a little aluminum boat and catch trout. And then when my grandfather wasn't, when he was working, he wasn't able to take me in the boat. I would walk to the local stream or whatever and catch brook trout in the stream. So it all started fishing for trout. But I mean, even when I wasn't doing that, we'd be sitting on the dock catching like perch and whitefish, and you throw them in a bucket and look at them, and sometimes I'd sit there for hours and not catch anything, but I wanted to be fishing. So like my brother and I would do that every day through the summers when we were younger. And then we moved out here, and it was kind of tough because we went from having like fishing at our fingertips to like living in Phoenix. And Phoenix has fishing opportunities, but if you're in the city, it's very different. I mean, it's like urban fishing, right? It's they're little man-made lakes where the shoreline is concrete, and they're dug out, and there's a water recirculator in the middle to keep the water from being 130 degrees in the middle of the summertime, so something can actually live in there.
Are there any techniques for bass in 130 degree temperatures? Like, what do you do with that?
I'll tell you what, and this is kind of straying from that, but you wouldn't believe how good the fishing is here in the summertime, because the bass, they've got it. The water doesn't get as hot as it does like in the true South, like Louisiana, Alabama, certain parts of Texas where that water temp gets like 94, 93, 94 in the summer. Our lakes are deep and clear enough, the actual real lakes, that it never even gets out of the mid 80s. So the fishing's great in the lakes, but yeah, man, in those urban ponds, that's a different deal. That's some tough fishing. And we didn't get out of fishing because like I'd spend a month every summer with my grandparents when I was out of school, and I'd fish every day. And
so you would go back to New Hampshire when for the summer,
dude. I don't know how we had the lease to do so, but like my grandparents were so cool. They had 2 old aluminum boats with 5 horsepower motors, and my brother and I were 8 and 9 years old, 9 and 10, 10 and 11, and we had free reign of those boats. We'd be out by ourselves in those boats. We each had our own, fishing all day, every day.
Yeah.
But so that was my fix, and I do it for a month every summer, and we finally bought a boat out here when I was like 12 or 13. My parents, they picked up like a 16-foot aluminum boat with a 40 horsepower force motor. I don't know if you remember the force motors, man. They were the cheaper version that Mercury would make it, but it was like not as good as a real Mercury. It was a force.
Yeah, like what was the market for the force outboard? Like what was that? What was going on there?
I think they were putting them on some more inexpensive boats. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what the real difference was, but like you had to mix the oil and gas yourself. You could it didn't have the oil injection or any of that stuff. But anyways, it was a good boat and a good motor, man. Like it was perfect. And we fished out of that every weekend. We were getting really into bass, not just so much anything, but like we were going to these real reservoirs in Arizona, and they actually have some pretty good fishing just outside of Phoenix. We had a lake that was probably like 30 minutes from our house in Mesa called Saguaro Lake. And it's still a good lake now. I mean, I've fished it this entire time. But it's got Florida strain bass. It's got a lot of underwater grass in it. It's not just like a straight desert clear water lake like Lake Mead or something like that. It's a real trophy fishery. And dude, I remember right before Thanksgiving when I was like 12 or 13 years old, we were having minimal success, but we'd go to the lake and catch a bass every one bass every 3 or 4 trips. Like we'd get skunked more than we would catch them. Yeah. And I bought a topwater walking bait when I was like 12 or 13 for my birthday. Went to the store and I bought it like at my birthday. Then we went fishing like a day or two before Thanksgiving, and it was way too cold to be throwing topwater. I didn't know that though, right? And I was learning how to walk the dog, dude. I was struggling, but I was just learning the technique. I had read about it in magazines and stuff. And dude, I caught a 12-pound largemouth, a legitimate 12-pound largemouth on this thing. And I had no idea, we had no idea.
On a walking bait in November.
Thanksgiving. It was way too cold to be doing that. It was way too cold to be doing that. It was unbelievable. So we weighed on the official Marina scale, and it's like 1198.
Wow.
I got it skin mounted, dude. I'm ashamed. We didn't know what we were doing, so we kept that.
You didn't get a graphite reproduction made? That's offensive. You know how many people you're offending right now, John?
Hey, I'm just being honest, man. Yeah, you told me I could be honest.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Never do that now,
right. Sorry.
Yeah, this is 20 years ago.
No, you're forgiven. All is forgiven.
Yeah, thanks. But anyways, man, yeah, that was pretty cool because that fish, of course I was already hooked, but that fish made some small waves like locally, and I got to meet a bunch of other local fishermen that were like, oh wow, this kid caught a 12-pounder, and so I got to meet a bunch of other fishermen. A bunch of fishing mentors kind of came out of the woodwork, and I still fish with my dad every weekend. And I mean, it was all about going out with my dad and my brother. But now I had some other dudes that saw, hey, this kid is an absolute fishing fanatic. He's fairly respectful, and he wants to learn. And I had a bunch of other dudes that would now start taking me fishing, and that was huge because like now I had a bunch of teachers and these handful of guys that I fished with from when I was 12 until I was 18. Man, I learned so much from those guys, and there's big of a reason as anyone on why I was able to fish for a living and still am.
Right on. So I just want to make sure I understand this. So you were born in New Hampshire, correct?
Yes.
You're born in New Hampshire, and then so you would go to New Hampshire every summer while you lived in Arizona?
No doubt.
So
no doubt. Yep.
What's interesting about that is we kind of have a similar upbringing in some respects. So I would go to Minnesota every summer. And
where were you in the winter?
I was in California. So I lived in California in my formative years. I lived in California most of the year, but in the summers I was in Minnesota. So the way you're describing New Hampshire, all the fishing you did and the aluminum boats, and Pete and I, my partner in crime, Pete Wagner, we hooked ourselves onto fishing. You know what I mean? Like, and also my grandpa took us fishing all over. He didn't fish himself, but he took us all over the place, But just that whole wonder, like what's in the water, these creatures that are in the water, how you're describing just looking at fish in a bucket, just that it reminded me of when I was a kid, just being amazed at fish in a bucket. And how cool it was that I caught that fish in a bucket, or I caught a lot of fish and put them in a bucket, not even doing anything with them. But, it was the way you described your New Hampshire kind of, formative years or whatever. It reminds me of how I felt about Minnesota. It's really interesting. Oh, yeah. And we have a similar background there.
Were you into fishermen?
Dude, I was huge into Fisherman. It was the most important. In Fisherman magazine, it was the most important magazine to me. Like, forget Time magazine or Life Sports Illustrated. I didn't care about any of the. I mean, I liked Sports Illustrated when the swimsuit edition was out, but other than that, I was all about In Fisherman. It was huge. In Fisherman, and then later it was Bassmaster. But In Fisherman, when it was, I'm sure you remember, In Fisherman used to be super thick. I mean, it was incredible what In Fisherman used to be like. The writing was fantastic. The photography was fantastic. The illustrations were fantastic. In Fisherman, without a doubt, and it sounds like it's the same for you, it played a huge role in me getting hooked on fishing.
Yeah, and it graduated into bass fishing like later on. Not that bass fishing is better than any other type of fishing, but like it was just the fishing in general, and they covered everything. And I was like the fact that I lived in Arizona, I was like super infatuated with the fish I could never catch. So like I thought like muskie and pike were so cool. Yeah. And I read all that stuff too. And ultimately it just ended up that bass was what I had access to. So then I got into my first thing was like, I just wanted to consistently go out and catch bass. And we were able to learn enough techniques and stuff like that where we could go out and catch bass almost every time we went. So then it was like, well, now I want to enter a tournament. And then I got super into, Bassmaster magazine, Bass West magazine, Bassin magazine, and, started following all the tournaments, and it just kept, the next level, the next level, the next level. But it all definitely started out as just fishing. And now, like, man, I wish I was able to do more, and I just don't make the time to do it. I'm so obsessed with tournament fishing. I can't get away from it. Like I would love to go fly fishing for a weekend with my buddies or take the family up to a cabin, and I could easily do it. Like it'd be the easiest thing in the world for me to be like, you know what, that week I'm off next summer. Let's just go do it. There's some amazing fly fishing just a few hours from me, and I like to fly fish, but I would just like, oh, there's a tournament. I'm gonna fish it, and I enter and I do it. I just can't get away from it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. For I'm a little bit older than you. For me, it was watching. Well, what happened is how I transitioned into bass fishing. I remember going into I think I told you this on your podcast. I remember going into like a tackle shop and seeing a holder of like brochures, but the brochures were of Bassmaster magazine, or the Bassmaster television show. And so you could take a brochure and you could see the listings of what shows are going to be on, and it was airing on the Nashville network at the time, way back in the day. And I was like, what is this? You mean fishing can be a competition? Like, wait, this is a whole nother world. So
you ever saw tournament fishing?
What's that?
That was the first taste of tournament fishing. Like you didn't know what tournament fishing was.
Never heard of it.
Interesting.
Never heard of it. I saw it in a tackle shop, this brochure. And then I remember watching it, and Bob Cobb, he was the producer of the Bassmasters. I was freaking hooked. I watched it religiously. I wasn't so worried about church on Sunday. I was more worried about watching the Bassmasters on Sunday. Like and then from then on, I mean, I don't know if I told you this, but for a big portion of my, younger life, I wanted to be a professional bass fisherman. And it was solely due to that show and how, Bob Cobb was like a master storyteller. They didn't have a whole lot of cameras, but he told the story of the lake, the history of the lake, the anglers. He just built everything up so well that I was just, I loved it. And that's how I got into bass fishing. How did you get in, like, what was your first tournament? I guess, how did you make that leap into tournaments? What was your first tournament? And then what was the tournament that just kind of, it set you down the path that you're on right now?
Well, I definitely fished a few tournaments, like as a teenager, that were like not even tournaments. They're more like get-togethers. But to me, they may as well have been, the biggest tournament in the world. I was so excited about them. And, I fished a few of those, just, random, like 10 guys getting together. There were some like fishing forums and stuff that were Arizona based, and like they would literally do like an annual get together where everyone from the forum that would participate would go out and throw 20 or 30 bucks in, and they'd grill hot dogs afterwards, and everyone would just have fun. And that was like maybe my first taste. They weren't even real tournaments, but the team circuits were actually pretty big at the time in Arizona when I was a teenager, 14, 15 years old. And they were drawing 100 to 150 boats per tournament. And, one of these guys that I was talking about earlier, one of my like early fishing mentors, his name is Gil. He's still around, lives right down the road from me. He was kind enough to say, hey, look, let's fish the whole year. If you can pay half of the entry fee, I'll cover gas and lodging, and if we need it, and everything else. Let's just fish. So we did it, man. We did the whole circuit, and I thought it was super cool. I was like 14 at the time, and I just to lay the schedule out in front and see like, okay, there's 6 tournaments on 6 different lakes. I'd never been to most of the lakes, and that whole year we fished, never got a check, never even came close to sniffing one. And it was an eye-opening experience, but dude, it didn't matter. Like I was all in. It's, we didn't have success right away, but I didn't need it. It was, I was completely hooked at that point.
And so what was that tournament that you competed in where you're like, oh, wait a minute, I can do this, and I can, this could be something. Like I could have a future in this.
So, probably fast forwarding a few more years, I got into the Federation. I fished it 1 year. This is the TBF Federation, the FLW affiliated federation. I fished it 1 year as a co-angler. I had been fishing. At this point, we had an older bass boat, and I was fishing a lot of team tournaments and stuff as a boater, and fished that federation when I was like 17, 18 as a boater, and I got Angler of the Year, for Arizona in the points, and then.
And just for the records, I mean, people need to understand, and I've said this for many, many years. I think some of the best anglers. I don't even think this is going out on a limb. I think the best anglers are out west. So, I mean, you're competing against some sticks, dude. Like, I mean, that's no small thing to accomplish. Especially what you're 17 or 8. How old were you?
Yeah, 17 or 18. I can't remember which one, but there's good fishermen everywhere, right? But I will say that the dudes out here are pretty versatile fishermen because our lakes are tough and there's a lot of variables that you have on all the different lakes. But so I got that, and so we had our regionals. You make the state team and you go to regionals, and then it was kind of the biggest tournament I had ever fished at that point, and ended up finishing third in regionals and first in our state. So then I had made nationals, and that was kind of like my first taste of like fishing some bigger tournaments and getting to travel to fish. And the fact that I was so much younger than everyone else, what's funny is in that regionals, I met Brandon Palnick.
Right on.
And he
from
was
Idaho.
From Idaho in the same situation, right? And we had both won our states and had moved on to nationals. But my first time I ever met him, dude, he was idling. It was before takeoff one morning, and I'm sitting there in the dark in my boat, and I just, bam, my boat just gets jarred and rattled. And I look back. And it's him. He had idled square into my motor because he was looking at his cell phone, not paying attention to where he was driving.
Ouch.
Yeah. It ended up being funny now. But anyways, man, that was like just like the first taste of that. And I was like, I'm so young. Like, I feel like it was a confidence booster anyways that I was able to at least fish with those dudes and be quite a bit younger.
So tell me the process then. You started your career, if I'm not mistaken, with bass, correct? Or was it?
Yeah. So I fished a bunch of like random regional tournaments, and one of the biggest regrets I have is not fishing co-angler more because so I had that confidence, that almost false confidence. I was doing pretty well in the team tournaments and doing well locally. So I started to sign up for a lot of like the one bass pro-ams, which were a big deal in the Southwest at the time. Yeah. They were like, as high of a level in the Southwest as there was. And I was traveling a little bit more in the Southwest, but I wasn't doing real well, man. I wasn't cutting a lot of checks doing those. I was inexperienced, and I was trying to relate everything to my lakes back home, and it just wasn't working out. And I actually signed up to fish the Bassmaster Opens. I'm guiding full time at this point. I signed up for the Bassmaster Opens. I'm like 20 years old. Go back there and get my teeth kicked in. And like literally, I'll guide for 2 weeks straight, save up enough money to go to a tournament, throw it all away, man, because these were expensive lessons, man, that I was learning. You pay $1,000 plus entry fee and then the expenses, and it's 2 weeks of guiding to do that, right?
I don't mean to cut you off, but this is an important story. But also, you ever think about like the financials are all out of whack in bass fishing to such an extent? Like it shows to me, like when I say the financials, like what it costs to have a boat, and I love all this, by the way, as far as the equipment. I love all of it. I'm all about it. But when you look at it as compared to other sports, like the amount of the entry fee, the boat, the gas for your both the vehicle and the boat, all your rods, all your lures, the financials of all of it are so out of whack, dude. They're so out of whack, as compared to, I think, other sports, and yet it just shows you the passion that guys are willing.
That's all it is.
And then they get they spend all this money, and I'm one of these guys. I used to be one of these guys, as far as like tournament guys. And then they pay all this money, and then they get a measly check at the end of the day. So the vast majority, if they're lucky, they get a measly check, and then the next weekend they're out doing it again.
Yeah.
And that's, I've always been a believer, that's one of the reasons why I believe the sport can be bigger than it is. And it's got so much passion behind it. People pay so much money. But anyway, I digress. But I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's a horrible business plan.
It's a horrible business plan.
And if you didn't have the passion, you don't understand it, right? Like, dude, I've never been more mad than like the first time I went to like a real accountant. I was like 18 and I went to an accountant to do the taxes for the first time. I had guided all year and fished tournaments, and my mom takes me to the tax office and the accountant chews me out. He's like, you got to get a real job. You're not making any money. This is, you can't do this. And I was like, I remember on my way home being like, oh my God, like this guy sucks, man. He just trying to crush my dreams. And, but thought he was trying to do me a favor. And he probably was doing me a favor. Ultimately now, like, and you can do it. You look at the guys that have done it. There's a lot of guys that have made careers in the industry, but you've got to get lucky.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think you have to ignore those people. It's fine. Like, he probably gave you a lot of good advice with expenses, making sure your mileage, blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, think of that guy's job and think of your job. You got a way better job, dude. You got to go. Kids out there, go for your dreams. The people that keep on poo-pooing stuff, don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're sitting at a desk job. Don't listen to them. Sorry, I digress.
I agree. Well, hey, I think nowadays, man, you hear that more and more, right? People can make a living doing their dream job now, man. And like, it just, even, rewinding 15, 20 years to what we're talking about, it was different, man. Like, it just was like, yeah, you got to get the 9-to-5 job and do what you're supposed to do. But
I think, honestly, and I want to get back to your story here, but I think it's super important too, like, that young people, aspiring pros or whatever, understand that I would say there's never been a better shot now to do what you're doing for a living. Primarily because there's way more avenues to actually just even a podcast, or you can start a social media following. You now, for the first time in history, you don't have to rely on gatekeepers, the gatekeepers of like, oh, if you have in the video realm, it was like, okay, if I have a show idea, I got to pitch the show idea to people at a network or something, and then they have to sign off on it, and then maybe I'll have a TV show and make money on. Now, forget, you can do your own TV show. If you're an aspiring pro, you can make your own show about trying to make it, just with a GoPro, or you can have your own. As a brand, you can have your own. It's like what you're doing with your podcast, Josh. You can have your own entity and grow that and potentially make money at it. It's never existed before. So, and then there's more ways, more tournaments to fish. I just think it's actually a really good time to do this.
You're right. Better now than ever, for sure. 100%, man. I agree.
Yeah. So I cut you off. You were talking about. We were talking about how expensive it was and everything, and which actually leads me into, you're doing all this, you're fishing and it's hard. You're not, making a lot of money doing it, but you persevere and you have a passion for it. When was it that you did well and you started getting sponsors? And you hear it all the time. And I think sponsors in some respects are a double-edged sword. you have to have sponsors to finance, to be able to afford how expensive it is for the entry fees, the gas, everything. You need that support. It's super important. But at the same time, too, when I say it's a double-edged sword, they also, and this makes complete sense. If they're going to pay you, you have to give something back, of course, So, and some sponsors ask a lot, and if they're paying you a lot, they ask a lot of you. So if you have a lot of sponsors, there's a lot of time that that is taken away from maybe your ability to fish more. Kind of go through that, like, tell me first, like, when you started getting, these bigger sponsors, what was that like? What was the tournament where you saw that happening? And then just kind of that relationship, I would say a healthy relationship with sponsors. Like, how do you do that?
So that's a great question, man. There's a lot to unpack there, right? Because every sponsor and every angler is in a different spot. For me anyways, I didn't have many or any sponsors until I was probably 2 years into the Elite Series, so I was at that turning point there where I was struggling. I took a couple years off from fishing the regional tournaments and had one really good year where I had won a couple team championships and signed up for the Opens again. And I struck lightning at the right time, man. And I finished second place in the first Open, cast checks in the next two, and then boom, I'm on the Elite Series. I had made it through the points. And I had to even be able to get myself into that position. I was young, so I didn't have anyone relying on me. Didn't have kids. I wasn't married yet. I lived at home until I was 21. I didn't move out when I was 18, so I had supportive parents that were willing to let me stick around and kind of pursue my dream until I was ready to take off. And that was a big deal for me. Was if I would have moved out at 18 and I had the expenses of living on my own, I would have had to have gotten a real job, but I was making enough guiding to where I could at least pay for what I was doing. And so I make the Elite Series, but I was still so young and so new to it all. I was 23 now, and I had no sponsors. And I really thought, hey, I made the Elite Series. Now I can just call my shots, right? I got Angler of the Year in the Central Opens, and I'm just gonna every one of these endemic sponsors I call, they're gonna be ready to bring this new young guy in, and they can't do that for everybody. You're still unproven. You had a couple good tournaments, but you're still unproven, and they can't invest all of their time and resources into every kid that gets to that point. So for me, I really had to hustle through that first year. And it probably costs $75,000 to fish a year. It's maybe 65 if you do it super on the skimpy end, but $65,000 to $75,000 to fish a year on any of the major tours. And I didn't have close to that saved up, but there was no chance I wasn't going to go, right? I didn't have it saved up, and I didn't have it in sponsorship. I didn't have a fraction of that in sponsorship, but I had nothing to risk. That's one of the scary things. If you got a family relying on you and you have a good job, to have to quit a job to do that, that's scary. But I didn't have any of that, so yeah, it was a no-brainer for me. But I had started relationships with companies. I took some very small deals, even just a product deal or something, but with companies that I knew I wanted to work with forever, like Berkeley, Abu Garcia, Bass Pro Shops, Nitro, Mercury.
Yeah.
And I did it for nothing at first because I was hoping that I could build that relationship, and then if things ever lined up right, they're the ones I wanted to continue working with, because as cool as it is, if it's a dude that's making baits in his garage, it's probably, if you make it to that next level and you are worthy of maybe, being paid, it might not be there. So I did it, and I had a good first year. I made the Classic, and then the second year was I had a lot more doors opened up, and they've stayed open since then, and I'm still with all those same companies, man.
Yeah,
I've been super lucky for that.
Yeah, it's out of college. My first job out of college was for Bass Pro Shops in the video production department. So I just bought a Tracker Targa V18, which is like the quintessential like northern boat, you know? Like I'd never thought in a million years that I'd be buying a deep V, because I've always been like this like, I love bass boats. Bass boats are no doubt, they're without a doubt my favorite boat, you know? But I come up here and like there's so much like stuff to, you know, fish for. I'm like, well, I can't, if I'm going to buy a boat, I can't just have something. I'm digressing. I'll get back to what my point here.
Okay.
But you know, you can't have a boat that just does one thing up here. You know, I needed a boat to do so. But here's the reality. My next boat is going to be a bass boat. I've already told my wife this. But anyway, so I have this like loyalty to Bass Pro Shops. Tracker is the parent company of Bass Pro Shops is the parent company of Tracker. I've been in so many boats through the years filming, and my first bass boat was actually a Nitro. So I just like I feel comfortable. But again, Bass Pro Shops, you're absolutely right. That's a great company to be affiliated with. Berkley is maybe my all-time favorite fishing company.
I know you love them.
You know, we talked about Berkley Power Bait. You know, like I don't need to go on a tangent about like Berkley Power Bait again. But yeah, your sponsors are primo sponsors. When you were young and you were really struggling, like what was your lifestyle like? Where were you living? Were you just like eating peanut butter? And like, I mean, was it, because obviously you have to make you have to make sacrifices to make that kind of to me, it's just a great story about someone who has a dream. I mean, who doesn't love this story? Someone who has a dream and basically sacrifices and kind of, I mean, when you look at that $65,000 to $75,000 a year, just to compete, right, in a sport where most often you're losing, like most times you're losing, like it's very hard to win. The biggest thing is obviously, you know, but the biggest thing in bass fishing is just to be consistent. But like, it's just, if you look at it from a distance, you might be like, "Oh my God, that's just like insurmountable odds." But you did it, and I've talked to other people that have done it. It's doable, but you got to sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, that's intimidating to know. Hey, I've got to win X amount of dollars to even break even, and then you're not even paying your bills at home. But again, man, I had moved out at the time. I'm living with now she's my wife, Chantel. And
by the way, how did she handle all this? Like, so I'll tell you a funny story about relationships. And I'm not proud of this fact, okay? But so at Bass Pro Shops, so I'm a videographer at Bass Pro Shops. I have this kind of ulterior motive that I'm going to springboard from from Bass Pro Shops into a professional bass fishing career. But I met a woman at Bass Pro Shops that absolutely broke the hell out of my heart. After I did well in a tournament, almost won a tournament on Bull Shoals Lake, which, by the way, I was fishing out of a 17.5-foot bass boat, and people were making fun of me, I'm sure. And I nearly won the thing, 5 ounces.
Good for you.
And I was all keyed up, you know, that I'm gonna just and she dumped me basically because she couldn't see having a life with a professional bass fisherman. That wasn't the only reason. Like, there's a number of... to me, what I do for a living now, it's like kind of the best of both worlds. I still really admire what guys like you are doing. I think I'm always a fan of people that go against the grain, you know, and you're a perfect example of that. So, but that, you know, relationships... that's a hard deal. You guys are on the road a lot, and financially, it's like that's tough. And I give you a lot of credit. I know you have 2 children. Kudos.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I mean, now we live a pretty normal life, right? Like, we're just a normal married couple with 2 kids. But at the time, we were so young, we didn't really know any better either. You know, neither of us had ever, you know, experienced anything else. So, like, when I met her, I was already kind of trying to pursue this, and that was a big thing. Like, I can't imagine just like, you know, just maybe living a normal life, working a normal job, and then being 35, or, you know, say I had a different job, and now I was going to be like, hey, Chantel, I think I'm going to do this and try to be a professional fisherman and be gone for 6 months out of the year. and have all this financial insecurity with just it's not the most financially secure business you could have. It would be very difficult. But at the time, man, we didn't know any better. It was not a big deal. Like, we were so naive, it didn't really matter. And we were trying to, we lived in a small house, and we didn't eat expensive food. Like, it was PB&J, and like, it would be a treat, dude, when I'd be out at a tournament, and I would spring for some good deli turkey. That was like a treat, man. It was a big treat over the PB&J. It was a turkey week, because maybe I had gotten a check the week before or something. But you just do it, and you're doing what you love, so it's not that big of a sacrifice. You don't want to live like that forever. Like, I remember my first year on tour, I roomed with Cliff Perch, and I was still in that zone where I was like, I don't care. I'll sleep in my truck. I'll do whatever. And he's like, yeah, I was like that too, and that's good, but you can't live like that forever. And if you want to have a family, you have to, at some point, be able to transition into at least a more normal existence and being. Because, like, I think, I mean, if you really, like, if I had to go back and do it again, I would right tomorrow. And I was, when COVID was hitting, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to go back in that mode again.
Right.
But it's no big deal when you're that passionate about something, right? I mean, you do the same thing to do what you love.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Like, if you, to me, there's a level of freedom to it, like to me, it's about freedom. And I mean, I love being a freelancer. I work for myself, and it comes with sacrifice. I mean, when I've had times where there's not a whole lot going on, and we get a little nervous, I've driven for Lyft, I've driven for Uber. Like, you make it work so that, you just find a way to make it work, and I put so much value in working for myself, and I think that's a very similar mentality, if not the same mentality that professional bass fishermen have. It's you're your own boss, and it's kind of a cliche to say this, but your office, I mean, is how are you going to beat that office? And it's the same for me. When in the back of the boat, I'm just out in nature. I'm like this. I'm seeing the best anglers competing. I'm learning from them. I sometimes I pinch myself. It's funny. I think as a kid, I might have been maybe disappointed that I was on the back of the boat, not in the front. But as a mature adult, I'm actually very immature. But in that respect, I'm actually pretty mature. In that, with life experience, I'm like, this is beautiful, man. Like, and I feel very fortunate. So, what advice would you give? There's so many. I see these young kids, and it's so cool to see it. You got the Guggen Squad. These guys have blown up on YouTube. It's crazy. I've met Alex Perrick, one of the Guggen Squad. He was a nice guy. They've got a crazy following, and they've, young kids, aspiring. There's all kinds of new aspiring professional bass fishermen. What advice would you give to someone that wants to do what you're doing?
So, you're totally right. And those dudes have found an amazing avenue and path for themselves, and they're getting to do what they love. I can't speak to the production side like they can't, speaking from a tournament fishing perspective, the best advice I can give is to put fishing first, right? And like, I didn't get back around to answering what you had. I missed several of the questions you've asked me, just going off on other tangents. But you would ask, like, what advice do you give kids that are looking to get into getting sponsorships and stuff like that? And where's the balance there? What should the balance be? And honestly, like, when you're that young, 100% of it should be on the fishing. You first off have to learn how to love fishing. And if you're, a 13-year-old kid and you go out and have a not great tournament, you shouldn't have to get on social media and apologize to your sponsors. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't have to speak to that. You should just be like, okay, well, hey, I learned these lessons and let's move on to the next one. There should be no pressure from sponsorship on how you go out there and compete. And no matter what you say, the minute you start adding sponsorship into what you're doing, there's more pressure. There's pressure already, but there's more pressure. And like even now, I love it. I'm thankful to have the sponsors I have. But hey, man, there's a lot of dudes that would want the sponsors that I have, right? And they're great fishermen, and they're ready. As soon as I slip up, they're going to take it. And that's a lot of pressure, man. Even though I'm not worried about paying my bills tonight, like if I go out and have a bad year or I don't do the things that I need to be doing on the marketing side, that's a lot of pressure, man. So like, delay that as long as you can. Focus on learning to love the sport, have fun with your buddies, fish with a lot of different people, learn all the techniques. Focus on learning how to fish, because even if you are lucky early on and you land the dream sponsor, if you can't back it up on the water and consistently catch enough fish to get media exposure, it's not going to last. And so ultimately, if you can become a really good fisherman first and learn that stuff as you go, the rest will take care of itself. And that's what, like, Skeet Reese has given me some super, super incredible advice over the years. And that was one of the things he told me, like, right off the bat, was like, fishing comes first. If you're catching fish, everything else comes really easy. You just be yourself and catch fish. And it sounds easy, and it's not that easy to just be yourself and catch fish. But if you can do that, things come easy. And the years when I'm really catching fish, things come a lot easier. And the years when I'm not catching them as well, things are a lot tougher. So you got to put fishing first. You don't see like the next high school stud football player, sophomore in high school. He's not on social media trying to, promote Nike or Adidas or anything like that. He's on the field, and he's in the weight room and he's practicing. And I don't understand why fishing is so different than that. I mean, do you have any idea why fishing comes across so differently and everyone tries to jump in so early on this side?
Yeah, I don't know. I've not really thought about that. That's a good point. But yeah, you gotta. There's so much to learn, and I think it's important that you focus on fishing as much as possible. I wanted you brought up Skeet Reese. Skeet Reese had one of the most incredible streaks in fishing, bass fishing, and it was I think it was in early 2000s, mid 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. I asked him about it, and he said that something happened where he missed the Classic or something. Do you remember any of that year? Something weird happened. I can't remember exactly what happened, but he told me that he actually had to see a sports psychologist about it, because having a year like that and then going and I can't remember exactly, but it just shows you how intense he is and how seriously he takes his fishing, that he actually saw a sports psychologist. It was like, I need to get this taken care of. I can't have this in my brain. There was something going on where he was like mentally screwing himself up. Has he ever talked to you about that at all? I wish I could remember it better.
Not that exact story, but like, he's one of those guys that just, when he can operate naturally, that's when he's in his best state, right? Like, when it he goes with the flow, he's having fun. And it sounds like he got in his own head, right?
Yeah, it was something along those lines. But what I was originally going to say is that I don't know that there's anybody better at how do you say this? Just being a marketer and business, relationships with sponsors and value, knowing your value and knowing how to negotiate. I just look at Skeet. Skeet's got enough. I don't know exactly, of course, but I would say that Skeet's probably got one of maybe the best sponsorship. What do you call that?
Portfolio, maybe.
Portfolio. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word, but I don't know of a better angler, that with this, that kind of a sport sponsorship portfolio.
If you were to talk to him and just kind of hear like the accomplishments he's made, like in the business world, it's incredible, man. I look up to him a ton for who he is as a person, but for that, and he it's not like I sit down with him every week and talk about this kind of stuff, but man, he's told me, especially early on, just some key things like that have like just rung true time after time after time, man. He's a very smart guy.
Yeah, and I've heard yeah, he knows what he's doing. But okay, so moving on here, because I don't know how much time do you have that I can just keep gnawing your ear off.
I'm good, dude. I've got a little while longer. As long as I'm off here by 2, I'm golden.
Okay, perfect. So there's a few things I want to cover here. Curious about what you think the state. What do you think the state of what's the state of bass fishing right now? Like, what are your thoughts on where bass fishing is as a sport? Now, I know there's a lot of controversy, what's happening with bass and what's happened with Major League Fishing. We don't necessarily have to get into all of that because basically I work for Major League Fishing. I don't, I got to be careful here. But just in general, the state of bass fishing, the sport of bass fishing, how are we looking in your opinion?
From I don't know. I think as a whole, I think we're in like you said earlier, it's never been a better time to get into doing this for a living. I think it's probably as healthy as it's ever been. I don't know what it's going to look like in 25 years, but when I was a kid, it wasn't really cool to be a bass fisherman, right? I mean, it was really cool to me, but I don't think anyone else in my school cared about it. There were some really tiny youth clubs and stuff, but there was no high school. If you just look at the growth in high school and college fishing and juniors, that speaks tons of levels to the growth of the sport.
Can I just got to tell this story because it's so true. I couldn't agree with that more. I've seen it firsthand. So I did a shoot with Alex Perrick from the Guggen Squad. And there's a river near me that freezes in the winter, and it's full of lake sturgeon, right? So he came out for that, and I got some buddies that are really good at this kind of fishing for lake sturgeon through the ice. He came out for that. He had like a groupie with him, like that he met on Instagram, and I'm like, and she was like very attractive, and I'm like, let me tell you something, dude, that was not happening when I was in school, when I was in high school, or any time. I was living in California, dude, and I mean, I was like ashamed. I mean, I wasn't ashamed, but I didn't openly like, hey, everybody, I'm bass fishing, and I wear like surfing shirts just like every other California kid, just to kind of like maintain, like just make sure I didn't get beat up, volleyball shirts and beach wear and all this nonsense, but I was a fisherman. But I was kind of in the closet, you know what I mean? And here it is, now it's like, it's way more cool.
And that's social media and YouTube. And then kids now can jump on YouTube and man, they got these dudes that they watch that are cool. And they want to be like these cool dudes that are fishing on YouTube, man. And these cool dudes that they see fishing on TV. And it was different, man. The access to that type of stuff was not there. So you're totally right. And the YouTube is a whole nother that is growing it's growing the sport like crazy. It is, man. So
what do you see for the future of bass fishing then? Do you think it's just going to keep growing? It's going to.
Well, I mean, so I see the challenges are, how can the lakes and fisheries sustain?
Right.
Maybe the fishing pressure is one thing, but the regulations is another, man. Like, what do you think the regulations and stuff to the direction that we're going with regulation in our country? What's it look like in 25 or 50 years to you?
Well, I mean, I'll go back to this. I kind of am, I'm sort of the opinion where I used to be like, yes, I want professional bass fishing to be a mainstream sport. I want it to be is looked at, with as much reverence as golf. People look at golf, or any sport. Like, to me, I still to this day, I think fishing is just as great of a sport as golf or any sport for that matter. I mean, when you look at sports just in general, they're all nonsense. They're all absolute nonsense. I mean, look at golf.
It's funny to think these are grown men playing a game. for a living. It's crazy, isn't it?
Oh, it's just, it's just ridiculous. I mean, look at it, just when you think of how nonsense, golf is, and I know a lot of people enjoy golf. I've enjoyed golf. I'm typically drunk as hell when I'm playing golf, but it's like it's a little white ball that you're trying to hit into a little cup in a hole. It's just so stupid. People have to find things to do with their time, and that's what golf is. It's with any sport. And I just happen to enjoy trying to catch a, creature that swims in the water. That's how I get off, I mean, probably not the best way to put it, but you know what I'm saying. So when I look at what are we going to do if I don't care as much as an adult now, like as a mature adult in my mid 40s, for God's sakes. I just turned 45 not that long ago. I have no idea how it happened, Josh, but boy, I don't know how old you're, quite a bit younger than I am, dude. It starts to, I got so much gray now. I got gray in my eyebrows. I got to pluck my eyebrow. And then time, I remember I had, relatives older than me, when I was growing up being, you got to enjoy it because it goes really fast when you get older. Dude, it's no lie. Like the older you get, for whatever reason, something happens with the space-time continuum or something. I have no idea, but like a year goes by like that. And luckily 2020 went by pretty quick. We don't need any more like that. But I go off on these tangents. I'm sorry, dude. I don't think it's... I used to think, okay, the most important thing is that we consider bass fishing to be a truly mainstream sport. I really don't give a damn so much anymore about that, because what are you going to do? Like, do you want every place that you go to be full of fishermen? Like, I don't want that. I don't want more pressure on the lakes, so I don't know how I feel really about it anymore. I mean, the more successful that fishing gets, the more mainstream it gets, the more pressure the harder it's going to get potentially. The more boat ramps are going to get filled up. So I don't necessarily. I think professional bass fishing has all the elements to me that it could be a mainstream. It should be, but the ramifications for that aren't necessarily great as far as fishing pressure. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I agree. And you want more people to be exposed to it because it's a great pastime, and you want everyone to be able to experience that, right? But yeah, I mean, there are drawbacks. Like, I feel bad for hunters, man. Like, the fact that hunting has kind of gone under the microscope, and these a lot of these hunters that are more popular, they make a post on Instagram and they're receiving death threats from folks who don't agree with hunting. Oh boy. And dude, I just pray that never happens in our sport. And it's a little bit different, but it's still, hey, the more popular it gets, the more eyeballs are on it, and it's in a pretty good spot right now, man. If it stayed this way or grew a little bit more, it'd be great. But I don't know. It's in a good spot right now, anyways.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, okay, so we've gotten through 2020, just a miserable year for many people, understandably. We've managed it pretty well. You and I, sounds like, which I'm very thankful for. But what are you kind of, and this even goes with COVID too. Like, I know it's kind of a fool's errand to try to predict anything, but what do you think? Just in general, what 2021 is going to hold? Just in general. Like, what is COVID everything gonna calm down? The vaccines get out and everything. So with that, but also what do you see for the bass fishing world in 2021?
Well, that's that first question. I have no idea. I'm not even going to try to tackle that, dude. I mean, I have no clue. If someone knows, I'd love to know. But all I can do is hope for the best. Hopefully things curve in the right direction and become more under control. And, on a selfish level, man, I hope we can get out there and do as much fishing as we did this year. I know for a fact we're going to be doing a lot of fishing, and the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour, the schedule is awesome. I know that I'm looking forward to the first tournament here is in like less than 2 months, man. You'll be going, and I'm looking forward to that, dude. We've got 2 tournaments in Texas to kind of start the year, so that's going to be really good. Going to be a lot of big fish. They're Great Lakes, Lake Palestine, and Sam Rayburn. I like Texas in general. It's one of my favorite states. And hopefully by the time it's time to go up north for us anyways, things are chilling out a little bit across the country, man. But I don't know. There's no predicting anything. Like, this was a great year to learn that you can't plan everything perfectly, and you have to be able to be flexible, and you have to be able to change plans, at the drop of a dime, and learn how to live life like that a little bit. And I guess that was one of the things that I've learned this year, is you can't predict everything, and you got to be able to just have a good attitude and try to make the best out of whatever you're dealt, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's absolutely right.
What do you see coming up this year?
You probably don't want to hear what I just in general.
Tell me.
With COVID, I don't know. I think this society is going to be fundamentally different when we come out the end of this thing. I think there's a lot. I would invest, and whether you agree with this or not, so this is not me saying this is going to be my investment advice, and I am not an investor, but I'm going to give some investment advice. I've never given investment advice, so take that into account. But it seems to me that there's there are like fundamental changes happening, and it seems to like more, whether you agree with this or not. Again, I'm gonna give you an idea. So in my retirement account, I'm diversified. I got different investments. Diversified investments. In my green energy sector, okay, 175% increase this year. 175% increase, Josh. Like the biggest of all of my investments.
That's big.
That's the biggest investment. And then the other one is in the other biggest investment class or whatever was in big companies, so like Amazon and these, the big companies, Target, that was also a huge one. I see COVID, it's changing, whether intentional or not. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. Now, not all conspiracies are real, okay? Theories are real. Not all conspiracy theories are real. But there's a lot of conspiracies through history that have turned out to be absolutely real, and it's important to pay attention to those. But I think what's happening is this COVID, they're using it. When I say I can't even believe I'm talking to you about this right now. It's funny. When I say I'm talking about the power, the global economic power of the world, right? They're seeing this as a time that they can change things fundamentally. They can get everybody going in the same direction. I would invest in anything green, anything like Tesla. If you invest in Tesla when they first went public, you would be so rich right now. Like oh my God, it's killing me. But I think anyway, I'm going off on a super crazy tangent right now. But things are going to fundamentally change towards a more green, sustainable. I know some people are puking right now, but it is what it is. I think that's what's happening. Whether you like it or not, COVID's changing stuff. It's weird. But when it comes to fishing, this year should be phenomenal for just me, shooting the Bass Pro Tour. And my fingers crossed that COVID, some stupid ass variant doesn't show up that throws us back into 2020 again, and we're back to the same nonsense with lockdowns. That very well could happen. I'm hoping that things just start to calm down. I don't know though. Honestly, I have no clue, dude. I have no clue. What's.
I hear you. What you're saying is scary for sure, dude. And it just there's folks that are gonna go with it. There's folks that are gonna try to make the best of it, and there's folks that are gonna fight tooth and nail against all of that stuff, right? And we know all three types of people. So I don't know, man. It's a tough, scary thing. But like you said, hopefully we can just get through this year, and hopefully on the other side, it's not too bad.
Well, I mean, look at like what's happening. Big business is doing great right now. But dude, if you're a small business and you're like have a restaurant or
brutal,
life is sucking.
I feel so bad, dude, for so many of those folks, man.
I'll just be honest with you. I got a real problem with some of this stuff that's happening with closing these lockdowns and there's a lot of capitulation that seems to be happening with the whole population. They're just bending over and just bowing down to. I don't know. People I think need to be a little bit more vigilant. And the virus is real. I know it's a real virus. My wife is a nurse, but the narrative around this virus has me. I got the hairs on and I got a lot of hair on my back. They're all standing up right now. But anyway, let's get back to fishing here for a second. We'll wrap this up soon here. I appreciate your time very much, dude. Tell me,
likewise.
We are in winter, okay? Just give me a few of your best, winter bass fishing tips, whether it be reservoirs, obviously in Arizona. Most people are fishing for bass in the winter in reservoirs right now. Just kind of tell me, what do you do in the winter?
Yeah, here and across the country, I really love winter fishing. It's not the time of year where you're going to go out and consistently catch fish all day long, but plan your trips out well. The fish this time of year feed in windows, right? So like the most important advice that I could give personally would be to go into your fishing day with that in mind. Know that those fish don't have to eat a lot to keep their weight up because the water's so cold, their metabolism is moving so slow that they might eat one time a day and they're going to be good. So try to, and you're never going to know exactly when that's going to be, but keep a couple things in mind. A lot of times going out in the afternoon, once that water's warmed up, is probably the safest bet. The best bite most often this time of year is from 1 to 5 o'clock when it gets dark. There are instances where you can catch them early, there's been plenty of winter tournaments where we made our hay like first thing in the morning, especially on a full moon. If you're going to fish in the wintertime on a full moon, you're going to get a good bite right off the bat. Right off the bat for the first hour. And then you may as well put it on the trailer for the next 4 or 5 hours until the late afternoon again when it picks back up. But, those fish are going to take advantage of that warming water. They're going to take advantage of, I personally just believe on that full moon, they eat a little bit at night and then it's done and they're full and they don't need to eat again because their metabolism moves so slow. When it comes to choosing baits, you can keep it really simple. You only need a few different baits. A jig works really well. A crankbait, I do a lot of cranking in the wintertime. The colder the water is, the more subtle your crankbait needs to be. Like the flat-sided crankbait works really well when it gets super cold. And a jigging spoon. If you are good at using your electronics and you're in a lake where the fish go deep, a jigging spoon's a killer this time of year.
Tell me about who you'd like to plug, your sponsors. You got your podcast. Talk about your podcast. How do people follow you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, first off, man, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'm honored that I'm one of the first guests on your relaunch here, and we talked about it before, but I'd like to get you and Pete on to our show again. I had you on. I think we talked in like maybe October, and it was one of our best podcasts, man. Honestly, we had some great reviews on the conversation. So We have to do it again, but and thanks to the listeners of the show here. If you want to learn more about just kind of what I've got going on, you can follow me on my social media pages at Josh Bertrand Fishing, and you can check out the podcast. It's at Anglers Happy Hour. You can look at it on Instagram, but I'd rather you just go on to iTunes and listen to one of the episodes. The one we did with Greg would be a good start. If you like Greg, if you're listening to this show, listen to the one that he was a guest on. I think we had him in like early October. We've been doing it for a year. We've got like 60 episodes under our belt, and we actually just launched a YouTube page today. Or I guess this is coming out a couple days later. So we launched it a few days ago. I'll say that. But that's going to be Anglers Happy Hour on YouTube. I'm appreciative to all the great sponsors I've got. Instead of listing them all off, if you follow me, you'll learn plenty about all of them. So.
Well, you rock, dude. Really appreciate you doing this, taking your time out. And my wife just arrived here. So talk about timing, But yeah, really appreciate it, man. And you're a class act. I think the world of you. You're a hell of a fisherman, and I really look forward to being in a boat with you in 2021, my friend.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, hopefully it's at Red Crest, man. I appreciate you having me on, and have a great rest of the winter, man.